One of the most talked about programs of the year, Dahmer on Netflix. The miniseries, of course, about Jeffrey Dahmer. It's been #1 for weeks on there. But on the lighter side of things, we've also got a new Pictionary game show. Hey, let's talk about TV. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews. Welcome to TV News and Reviews for the week. We do this every week for you on the channel. New shows, and of course we tackle the week's news as well. If you're new to Dan Reviews It, well, please consider subscribing down below there. Would love to have you as one of my subscribers. And as well, if you are a TV fan, like I said, we do this every single week on the channel. So this week we're going to tackle 5 new programs, one of which is the highly talked about Monster Dahmer, the Jeffrey Dahmer miniseries over on Netflix. But we've also got a couple of lighter shows as well, although I don't know. Some of them are still pretty heavy. American Gigolo is very heavy on Showtime. The Serpent Queen, Wedding Season, that's more of a comedy a little bit, but there's like a murder mystery element there. And then we end with the game show, Pictionary, the light one of the group. So, yeah, actually, several heavy shows on this week's program. But first, let's tackle the news of the week. So, in renewals, we've got Solar Opposites with an early Season 5 renewal. Season 4 is going to air in 2023. Season 3 just wrapped up. So, obviously, loving the Solar Opposites life over there on Hulu. I've only seen, I think, Season 1 of this, but I enjoyed it. And there was a new Halloween special that just came out, I think, last week as well. So Hulu is all into the Solar Opposites business. And then Outer Range is going for a second season on Amazon Prime. This was a C show for me. It was very, very average. But Josh Brolin, I love him. I found the pacing to be a bit slow, but obviously, they're seeing enough good results there to warrant a season 2. In casting news, well, the world of WandaVision is ever expanding, and we've got now another casting piece of news from Agatha, Coven of Chaos. This is the, I guess, sequel series, really, from WandaVision. Emma Caulfield is going to be in the show, and if you don't know who that is, well, she was on WandaVision. She was the neighbor named Dottie. So they've now cast her in the same role for Agatha, Coven of Chaos. In casting news over on Velma, which is the new Mindy Kaling-produced adult animated series, really about Velma, but about the whole Scooby-Doo gang as well. Glenn Howerton is going to voice Fred from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Mindy Kaling herself is going to voice Velma. Sam Richardson, who we've been talking about a lot on the channel lately. He was just in a movie recently, in the new Hocus Pocus, and I think he was in a TV show recently too, but he's in The After Party as well, which was a great show from earlier this year. He's going to voice Shaggy, which they're calling Norville in this version, and fans are up in arms. Oh, you can't just change the people's name. Well, his name was always Norville. I don't know when that was announced, but a long time ago, 80s maybe. Norville Shaggy Rogers is his full name. So, shut up, people. Constance Wu is going to voice Daphne, and then other voices include, listen to this cavalcade of various voices. I assume most of these will be sort of guest stars or one episode here or there. Jane Lynch, Wanda Sykes, Russell Peters, Melissa Fumero from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Stephen Root, Gary Cole, Cherry Jones, Frank Welker, who is a longtime Scooby-Doo member. He has been voicing since the late 60s, since the inception, I think in 1969. Weird Al Yankovic, Fortune Feimster, Nicole Byer, Ming-Na Wen, Shay Mitchell, Debbie Ryan, and from the NBA, Karl Anthony Towns. So, I don't know how many episodes this is, but are they going to be, guesting in several episodes or one-offs? I don't know, but pretty cool cast list there. And yeah, Welker has voiced Fred in every iteration of Scooby-Doo, or almost, I should say, since 1969, and he's also been the voice of Scooby in many different productions. He was not part of the Warner Brothers movie Scoob, or no, he was, I think, but he just wasn't voicing Fred from, 2020. But I think he was still in it. I think he maybe did voice Scooby-Doo or something. All right, so in announced shows, NBC could have already picked up the first show for the 2023 fall season. This is a multi-camera, as-yet untitled show starring John Cryer, Donald Faison, Abigail Spencer from Rebel and Grey's Anatomy. And we don't really know anything about the show, but, multi-camera comedies, I still enjoy them when they're done well. The Connors, obviously, I watch that every week to review for you guys on my channel. But also, I still enjoy The Neighborhood on CBS. I think we're really down to like 3 or 4 maybe multicam sitcoms right now. So there's not many. All right, in other announced shows, David Cronenberg's Scanners. That was a movie, but it's coming to a TV show in part with HBO. It's going to have a Black Mirror writer involved and one of the directors from Lovecraft Country. I never saw that movie, but I know Cronenberg is like real creepy, sort of off the wall stuff. So should be interesting. And of course, with the Black Mirror and Lovecraft Country connection, that makes sense. Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits, here's another movie to TV adaptation, is coming to Apple TV+. It's being adapted by Taika Waititi, who, of course, is real hot these days. He co-wrote the last couple of Thor movies. And it will star Lisa Kudrow. So, again, we don't know much about that, but I guess if you know the plot of the movie, it's probably something similar. Chuck Lorre has booked his first HBO Max show. He's been a longtime CBS person, but it looks like he's going to do a single-camera show on HBO Max called How to Be a Bookie. It's going to star the comedian Sebastian Maniscalco. It's got an 8-episode show, or 8-episode first season, I should say, and it revolves around a veteran bookie who struggles to survive the legalization of sports gambling and his increasingly unstable clients, family, coworkers, and a lifestyle that bounces him around every corner of Los Angeles. So I like Sebastian's comedy. I don't know if I've ever seen him really act in anything, but could be interesting. All right, in odds and ends news, Trevor Noah. So we had mentioned last week that Trevor Noah announced on The Daily Show on the end of the week, the last show of the week, he said, hey, I've had a good run here, I'm leaving. And I had said, when I told you that news last week, well, I'm sure everybody at Comedy Central already knew that, but this was a big shock to the audience and whatever. No, nobody knew this. In fact, Trevor Noah had just had dinner, I think the day before, with one of the big suits at Comedy Central, maybe even the CEO or the president of entertainment programming or something, some big high up guy, and did not mention it. So I was way wrong about that. Nobody knew this was coming. If Trevor Noah has his druthers, he will be out by the end of this current year, not this TV season, but the end of 2022. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Obviously, they're going to have to, figure out a replacement, and I don't know what his contract states. That he can just sort of up and leave whenever he wants. I'm not sure, but so just sort of a little more insight on something there that we talked about last week. And then with the CW, we've been talking for months now about the different changes with the CW. They canceled over half of their shows back in the beginning part of the summer. So this fall they have a bunch of new shows, and then just a few of the veteran shows coming back. But they got bought out by Nexstar, so they're sort of looking into some changes, and part of that is going to be getting more of the comedy stuff back, and that means both scripted shows and the more, I guess they call it alternative programming, but things like Whose Line Is It Anyway? The World's, Dumbest Criminals, or whatever, those kind of shows they run on the weekends, or World's Funniest Animals, the Penn and Teller Magic Fool Us show. So they're looking into more things like that, and there hasn't been a sitcom on the CW really since the very, very beginnings when the WB and the UPN merged into the CW, and I think there were still 2 comedies that were on the air. Reba might have been one of them, and maybe Everybody Hates Chris was still on the air, but then by the end of like that season, they were both done. And so ever since, it's almost all hour-long dramas and supernatural programs on the CW and DC Comics shows. So they're looking to do more comedy, and it sort of makes sense because comedy is much cheaper to produce, especially the more alternative programming things. I'm sure World's Funniest Animals, costs like, I don't know, $200,000 or something to produce. You just have to hire an editor to cobble together clips from the internet or something. I don't know what they do, but so compare that to, I don't know, $500,000 an episode or something, or more. Probably actually much more for some of those effects heavy shows and stuff. So that will be taking place probably more so in the next TV season. But and then in reboots and spinoffs, Frasier finally is a go at Paramount Plus. We've been talking about this for it feels like years now, but they finally committed to a first season of the Frasier reboot. There is not an episode count yet, but studio insiders are saying probably about 10 episodes for the first season. And the only returning cast member is Kelsey Grammer. Now, of course, John Mahoney has passed on, the father. But everybody else, is still alive. Perry Gilpin played Roz, and Niles, the brother, of course. David Hyde Pierce is still alive. So I'm not sure if it's going to be like, that first Frasier. He uprooted from Boston, where Cheers was set, and moved all the way to Seattle. We didn't know any of these other people, and we got to know them. So now it's the same thing. He's, I think, in Chicago in this new one. And, I assume, his brother will probably pop in and out or whatever. And he's maybe still married to Daphne. That actress is still alive, Jane Leeves. So maybe we'll see from that. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about this because I think Cheers and Frasier are quite literally two of the greatest sitcoms that have ever aired. People were a little nervous, I think, when Frasier came on because they were like, well, this is sort of like really a side character from Cheers. How's his show going to be? And then it was outstanding. It ran for the same time length as Cheers, 11 seasons. But this one, I don't know. I have some mixed feelings about. I'm trepidatious. I'll watch it, of course, to review for you, but we'll see. All right, so that's it for the news. Let's move on to the reviews. 5 shows this week, and the reason we're only doing 5, and I was going to explain this, I guess, a little more when I talked about Pictionary, but usually we try to do 6 every week because there's always so many things coming out, and I've had to drop over the years a couple of different types of shows just because there's already too much out there. So we don't do like little kids programming anymore. I do very few dating shows. There's been a bunch of dating shows recently that have popped up on streamers. Hulu has one that I forget what it's even called. Netflix has one called Dated and Related, where they take like a pair of brothers and like try to set them up with, I don't know, sisters or something. I didn't watch it, but so there's a lot of that stuff. I'm just like, there's too many other things, too many scripted shows on. But in the syndicated market this season, we have 2 new talk shows, and in seasons past, I did review, the Nick Cannon talk show, Kelly Clarkson, and some of the other new ones. But they're all sort of the same now, I feel like, and it's hard to sort of gauge how they're going to be off of 1 or 2 episodes. So I decided I will mention briefly that the new Jennifer Hudson show is on, and the new Sherry Shepherd show is on. Sherry Shepherd replaced Wendy Williams, so all of her time slots, I guess, went to Sherry Shepherd, who had been sort of guest hosting the Wendy Williams show for months and months at the end of last season. So she's sort of just coming into her own. But I watched the first episodes of both of these shows, and I'm like, they're kind of the same. Like they have a famous mentor, kind of giving them a video pep talk, Rosie O'Donnell and Oprah, I think, with Sherry Shepherd's Oprah, I think it was. And then they have, the sort of talk to the audience part, and then your famous first guest comes on, Jennifer Hudson and Simon Cowell, and that sort of went viral a little bit. And then, sort of man on the street thing with Sherry Shepherd. Like, it's all the same formula as, like, Ellen and the old Rosie O'Donnell show and all of that. So, they're fine. I'm not going to grade them, but I want you to know they are available. Check your local listings. And Sherry, you can actually watch full episodes on her website. I'm not sure what it's called. It might just be called SherryShepherdShow.com or something, but you can watch full episodes of that one. There also is, I didn't watch this, but Karamo Brown from the Queer Eye, he has a new lifestyle talk show. It's not like a celebrity-based show like Ellen, and they're not going to do like funny bits and play games and stuff. It's more of a lifestyle show in the vein of, I guess, like a Rachel Ray or Martha. Well, of course, Rachel Ray has celebrities on too, but, Martha Stewart Living or something like that. So those are all out there. I'm not going to review them. So that's one more sort of genre that sort of has fallen by the wayside now with so many other shows on. So let's talk about Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. That's the full name of this. I just call it Dahmer. But this is with Evan Peters playing the serial killer that we all know. But other people involved in this. Richard Jenkins plays his father. You've got Molly Ringwald in here. Niecy Nash plays his neighbor. And this is created by Ryan Murphy. It's another one in the long conga line of Ryan Murphy produced and partially written Netflix programs. We've had them now for at least 2.5 years. Hollywood was one of the first, and then they did the Nurse Ratched show, and so we've had a lot of these so far. This is one of the hottest shows around. Everyone is talking about it, for good and bad. You've had, maybe you've heard the victims, family members of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims, have come out and said this is, gross, and it's so, detailed with what he did to his victims, and it's like you're glorifying him, and how many times do we need to relive this, and all of that. And critically, it's sitting right at about 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, so definitely not a loved show, but it's been at #1 on Netflix for a couple of weeks. So audiences are definitely checking it out and probably binging the whole thing. I couldn't do it. And I usually don't watch a whole 10 episode series to review for you anyway. Usually I just give it a sampling of the first, couple of episodes, but, I could barely get through 2 episodes. This is, really, it's an intense show. I don't think it at all glorifies Dahmer. Now, as we go into some of the trial stuff later on in the series, maybe they do paint him a little more sympathetically than he should be, which is 0. I did not witness that in the first 2 episodes. I'll say that. But I've heard that that's sort of one of the criticisms, is that they're painting him in sort of a positive light. I didn't think so, but maybe later on. But each episode, as far as I can tell, is like sort of taking one specific victim and showing like their story. And it's basically like torture porn, gore porn. I get that everyone is obsessed with like true crime, real crime drama, all that kind of stuff. And of course, Jeffrey Dahmer is one of the biggies. Everybody knows his name, and knows some of the stuff that he did to people. But Evan Peters gives a great performance. I think everyone is pretty much in agreement on that. And Niecy Nash, of course, she's an all-timer as well, and she does wonderful here too. But so it's got nothing to do with that. But the nature of this, and even the repetition of those first 2 episodes. Now well, all right, I'm going to give slight spoilers because it's a true story, and you already know that he got arrested and went to jail probably. But, in that first episode, he gets arrested. So in the second episode, it's partially flashback to another victim and partially, current time for, talking to Richard Jenkins, his father, and dealing with him, with Dahmer sort of inside the system at this point, but barely. So I imagine maybe as the episodes go on, we see more and more of that. But it was, mostly just sort of, okay, well, here's another victim. Here's what happened. It's ultra creepy. It's ultra horrific. It left me with just such an awful feeling. And Netflix thrives on this kind of show. They have so few shows that are either geared towards kids or on sort of the happy-go-lucky end of things. And we review those too sometimes, but they're so few and far between on Netflix. I feel everything's got to be so dark. And this, in terms of Ryan Murphy stuff, this is, one of the darkest ones yet. And that's saying something, because he usually goes sort of for the jugular in that regard. But boy, oh boy, I mean, it's well acted, and I guess it's sort of well shot. I mean, it's so dark in some of the scenes, but they certainly give you that tone. But this really just seems like, I don't know. I think there's a difference between talking about some true crime and even seeing some of it. But I think to spend at least the first 2 hours of this in this dreary, disgusting, manner. I know they want to bring you into it. I know, but it just, when have we had enough of this kind of thing? So yeah, I think Ryan Murphy maybe has finally gone too far with this one. I have to kind of side with the victims, because I do feel like, have we not heard this guy's story over and over and over again? I think maybe a movie would have sufficed or something, even make it a 2.5 hour movie. But it's like, I think we get it. The guy is, one of the all-time scumbags on the face of the earth. Like, I don't know what we gain from seeing sort of the torture methods and stuff over and over again. So I leave Dahmer with a C-. If it wasn't as well acted as it was, it would be even far lower than that. But All right, American Gigolo is next. This is over on Showtime, and it is based on the Richard Gere movie from 1980. I have never seen that. I didn't really know much about it, so I did do a little bit of research and like, okay, what is taken from the movie, what is not. Obviously, the movie is just a movie, so it's a couple of hours. This is a series, and I don't believe it's listed as a mini series either, so it could get multiple seasons. But apparently, the basic premise is very similar. And I think it's even the same name of the guy, Julian Kay. So at the beginning of this series, he is exonerated after being in jail for 15 years, and now is struggling to make his way back into a modern society in Los Angeles. And modern society, I think, is still taking place in the early 80s. In this case, but he is, he realized he was framed all those years ago, and he needs to figure out what happened and why. And John Barenthal is playing Julian Kay, and there's actor here as the younger version of Julian, as well as like a little kid and a teenager. But he's sort of the main, the adult version is the main focal point here. And I really like John Barenthal. I reviewed a recent show of his. I think it's called We Own the Night, or We Own the City, or something like that. And very, very well done. One of the best performances of the year, maybe still. I mean, that was many months ago, but I really like him in everything I see him in. He does usually play more, sort of dark characters, I guess. Another dark show. But in this, we actually have some very dramatic turns from Wayne Brady and Rosie O'Donnell. So some interesting casting choices here, and I think some of it works. I don't think all of it works, but I do like his performance, and I sort of like this character study of where he's sort of going in the modern day. I don't care, I guess, so much about the mystery of who framed him and why. I am not sure that I quite care about that part. But Rosie O'Donnell as the cop is like excellent. I've listen, full disclosure, I've always liked her, going back to the comedy days, with the early 90s and some of those movies. But, she pops up on dramas every so often. She was a fixture in a couple seasons of The Fosters on Freeform years ago. And I really think she is a very solid actor. And so here, again, she proves that. And I like that she sort of is championing him, because she was trying to get him out, for the frame up, and she's working with him, not really with him, but sort of to figure out what happened as well. I don't know that I love all the flashback stuff, and I maybe would have preferred to keep it in the present day. I sense maybe that's kind of where the movie was at, since we only had a couple hours. Maybe we were staying in that current day lane. Whereas here we're sort of bouncing back and forth. I'm not sure that captivated me as much. But I always like to look at Rotten Tomatoes, so I can tell you guys if, oh yeah, critics are loving this or critics are hating it. I was surprised at how low this was. I think it's like 32% or something with the critics on Rotten. I liked it certainly more than that. And in fact, if I had more time, I would have watched more episodes, because I think this is a weekly one because it's Showtime. I think there's 5 up or something, because they put up 2 or 3 the first week, and then every week after that. If I had time, I would have watched more. I'm going to complete this series, I think. And what a great acting job again from John Barenthal. So I leave American Gigolo with a B. All right, up next is going to be The Serpent Queen. This is on Apple TV. No, this is on Stars. And this is about Catherine de Medici from the 16th century, the old Queen of France. And here she is portrayed by Samantha Morton. And again, this is, there's some flashback stuff here. We see the younger version of Catherine too, played by Liv Hill. And really, I don't know too many people from this. I did recognize Samantha Morton from a couple of different things. And, she's mostly working in that sort of, British royalty or prestige sort of realm. But yeah, I've seen her in something or other. But it basically follows her adult life. But she's discovering that, being a queen's not all it's cracked up to be, and this and that. This is weird, because we've seen lately a lot of this sort of era of, between the House of the Dragon and all of the, not necessarily The Crown, because I guess that's newer, but like this reminded me a little bit of The Great on Hulu, which is more of a comedy and more of a sort of a satire, tongue-in-cheek type thing. But there's definitely some elements of that here. But, you know, movies like The Favorite and a lot of this sort of 16th, 17th century era type stuff that only hits me sporadically. Like, it's not one of my favorite genres at all, really. But when it's done well, something like The Favorite or The Great I enjoyed, or the recent one with, the woman, Christine Baranski from, what was that called? The Gilded Age, maybe? Which I really like. So it sort of depends on how it's handled. It's also sort of depending on how dry it is. Are the characters interesting or are they boring? Do I want to, you know, be in this castle, or do I want to be nowhere near it? And here, I think they do a lot of things that I like about this genre. You know, number one, they don't take it super, super seriously, but I mean, I would not call this a comedy like I would call The Great. It's definitely dramatic, but they give us some interesting characters. They give us some interesting dilemmas. And I don't necessarily mind a show that portrays the royal family or any sort of royalty as, you know, struggling, or, you know, oh, well, am I supposed to, you know, how am I supposed to act in this situation, or, you know, what's the right thing to do? And I like it when it's a little bit more complex like that, as opposed to, oh, well, I'm the queen, so everything must be like this. This is how we've done it for thousands of years. No, this is another, you know, strong female protagonist here. Samantha Morton giving us, you know, a lot to work with as the audience to enjoy. About her portrayal and all of that stuff. So, you know, maybe not a ton of new ground here in this genre, especially since we've seen it so much lately. But I enjoyed, you know, what I saw of this. So I'm going to leave The Serpent Queen with a B+. Wedding Season is next. This is an interesting one because it's many things. I thought it was kind of just a comedy at first. This is on Hulu, I do believe, and Rosa Salazar plays one of the leads here. She was in Alita Battle Angel, and she was on the TV show Parenthood, and I've seen her in a bunch of things. But she plays this gal, Katie McConnell, who is getting married in the very first scene, and a young man named Stefan, played by someone I'm not familiar with, Gavin Drea, or Drea. He, you know, comes and objects at the wedding. Turns out he has been having an affair with this Katie woman at various weddings over the summer, and then, you know, is rejected. But there is a whole family that was murdered. Katie's in-laws have been murdered at the wedding reception, and so it turns sort of from this kind of action premise at the front into a murder mystery / sort of action tale. And these keep popping up lately too, with actually similar looking gals too, because the one that comes to mind the most is The Resort with Kristen Milioti, who sort of is like Rosa Salazar, like very doe-eyed, very sort of, you know, cutesy and young looking for her, you know, mid-30s or whatever. And there's sort of a murder mystery involved there. I think that's probably funnier. But I think this is trying also to kind of toe that line between comedy, mystery, some action. I don't think it does it quite as well, but I think it's intriguing nonetheless. Now, I will say it's a little confusing because there's so many different weddings that the two of these people interact at that I do get a little confused about, like, okay, which wedding is this? What has all happened yet in the story, you know? So look, I'm not a dum-dum. Like, I can deal with flashbacks and stuff like that, but in American Gigolo, for example, I just wasn't as intrigued with that story as you know, the present day stuff. It didn't confuse me, but here, you know, because they're relatively the same age, it's like I get a little lost of, like, okay, what's been going on so far? What do we know? Was the family murdered yet? You know, X, Y, and Z. So I think it's intriguing, but I'm not sure it's up to par with some of those other ones. You know, specifically The Resort, you know, comes to mind the most since it was pretty recent and sort of has not quite the same premise, but a little bit in that regard. And what's funny is I just started rewatching one of my favorite shows, Happy Endings, And the first scene of that actually opens with someone trying to stop a wedding. So I just watched that pilot episode like maybe a month ago. And so when I saw this, I was like, oh, okay, are they doing like some sort of happy endings thing? Like, is this a straight ahead comedy? Because I didn't really know what to expect with it. And yeah, it turns out it went in a couple of other directions that seem mildly engaging. And I think, the chemistry between the two leads is good. But yeah, I'm not quite sure it's up to par with some of the others. So I will leave Wedding Season with a B-. All right, then finally, let's go to our fun show. I mentioned we weren't going to do the syndicated talk shows for the new season. Sherry Shepherd, Jennifer Hudson, the dude from Queer Eye. But a game show is a game show. I love it. And from the same people that bring you 25 words or less comes a new game show based on the old board game Pictionary. And the host of this, Jerry O'Connell. He's been doing acting since he was a little kid, but more recently he's been a talk show host. I think he is the first, maybe still the only male member of the TV show The Talk. The Talk basically was like a View ripoff, so it was all women for the longest time. And then a couple of years ago, Jerry O'Connell came on, and I think he's a really likable dude. That is one thing. So here they have one celebrity. It's kind of like 25 words or less, if I'm remembering the premise of that correctly. It's one celebrity and two people that have some sort of relation. They're sisters, they're best friends, they're college sorority sisters, whatever it is. Co-workers, and they will work alongside the celebrity to do the drawings and whatnot. And unlike the old, there was a couple Pictionaries before, and then of course the famous Win, Lose, or Draw show in the 80s, where they had like the big easel and you would draw like with the big marker on it. They don't do that anymore. It's all computerized now. They come up and sort of do it on a big screen or on a little screen, and then we and the contestants see it on a big screen behind them. And it's pretty basic. The celebrities are very similar to who has been on 25 words or less. That's how I knew it was the same. I looked it up, but yeah, it's like Colton Dunn from Superstore and the girl from Reba. People that we are basically known just now for game shows. Look, it's fun. There's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with it. I will say the prize is a little weak at the end because the final round or whatever, you draw three things. The first two you get $1,000 each for, and then if you get all three, then you get the $2,000 plus you go on a cruise, like a 7-day cruise or something, which is fine. But I don't know, people get seasick. People don't like cruises for a lot of different reasons, especially post-COVID. So is that the greatest grand prize? I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a fun show to watch. It's certainly breaking no new ground. And of course, with shows like this, I always have to ask, how is the host? I think Jerry O'Connell does a pretty good job. I think he gets a little too into the game sometimes and says things that perhaps maybe he shouldn't, hint wise or whatever. But I think he's a likable dude. So yeah, I think it's a fine show. I wish the prizes were better. But I'm glad to see that some, syndicated game shows are still thriving here. In this day and age. When I was a kid, it was like every afternoon was like 4 game shows in a row and stuff. We don't really have that anymore. So for that, I like it. I'll leave Pictionary with a B. All right, thank you for watching. Next week, we are going to have, actually probably later this week, because I did this one a little late, but my buddy Tim is going to be here to do part 1 of the new broadcast network shows. So we're going to talk about Monarch and the Rookie Feds and East Los Angeles, which is a cop show on, or East, what was it called? No, it's not East Los Angeles, it's something. East New York, maybe. I think that's it, on CBS. So Help Me Todd on CBS. So there's a whole plethora. The ones that sort of premiered first, we're going to go in, premiere date order. We'll tackle all of those in just a few days then and catch up on those. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.